Today we are joined by Jo Harris, who is the representative from the Field Studies Council. Now, the Council is an educational charity providing residential and day study centres. These centres contain expert staff and resources for schools and universities within a stunning environmental backdrop. The video makes it clear that the pupils' personal, social, emotional development linked to well-being is enhanced by such activities planned between the centres and the teachers. Thank you for joining us, and don't forget to subscribe. Jo Harris, welcome to the NAPE YouTube site. Thank you very much for joining us today. What is your actual title?
Well, I actually have two titles. I am the Education Team Leader at Flatford Mill, which is one of the many centres that we have in the Field Studies Council charity. So part of my time is spent leading the team at Flatford Mill. And I also have another kind of hat on that I wear, which is Education Development Lead. And that's for all of the centres, so organisationally, rather than just based at one centre. So I do a bit of both. Right.
And within that role, what do you find yourself doing?
Quite a lot of different things. I do a lot of teaching at Flatford. So teaching all age groups, right from sort of Key Stage 1 and early years, right up through to A-level and onto undergraduates, sometimes, not very often. But we do lots of primary and lots of secondary. So that's one thing. I also our kind of quality assurance scheme throughout the whole organisation, so making sure that we're constantly improving and making the most of our sites, and really pushing forward with how we deliver, and at the moment especially looking at to bring in sort of well-being and mindfulness and all the things that I've got quite varied roles. I do a lot of different things, which is great, and I do keep my hand in at teaching as well.
So effectively, as a part of the educational development team is to ensure that whichever centre that teachers and children go to, it's a sort of standard experience, everything's standardised, and they get the same experience, albeit there can be different environments, admittedly, from one centre to another.
Yeah, so the idea is that there is a basic standard. So a visit to any of our centres should look similar, although obviously, as you say, sites and habitats will be different. It's standardised to a point along the quality line, and then you get all the differences about different centres and different locations.
That's great. That's very useful. Thank you very much indeed for that. Now tell me, what is the mission of the Field Studies Council?
So the Field Studies Council is an environmental education charity, and our aim is to inspire everyone. So, it doesn't matter who you are, what age you are, or where you're from, to be curious and knowledgeable and passionate and care about the environment. And we aim to do this, and we do this in our kind of daily jobs by providing outstanding learning experiences and fun activities in the outdoors.
Well, you're certainly singing off my song sheet for sure. So is the FSC a membership organisation at all? Do you have to be a member of FSC?
No, it's not a membership organisation for schools. We do have a membership system, but it is simply for individuals who want to support the charity. So you can become a member if you want to support, outdoor education, but for schools, it's not a membership. You can anybody can book a course. We are also launching at the moment something called our digital hub, which has a subscription kind of outlet for schools who want to subscribe to extra virtual resources to kind of fit around their course. But it's not compulsory, and it's just an extra that some people want to use. That is mostly for secondary at the moment because it's kind of exam focused.
Yes, I think I've spotted it on your website. It's called FSC Virtual. Is that right?
Yeah, so we did a lot of work over the lockdown to try to still keep reaching people, and yeah, for us it was a very strange thing, as for many people, to not be outside with lots of children and students running around. So we did a lot of work on kind of virtual learning packages, which we did some free ones, so things like Fieldwork Nature Live and Primary Nature Live, and we did some paid for kind of packages that could be bought. Those have, in some way, they're not as relevant at the moment, thankfully, because people are back in centres. But that's why we're turning those then into this digital hub, which will kind of take from that and be able to be chosen so they augment the field trip.
It sounds like it could be useful for individual families, so parents using it.
Yes, yeah, it could
that
be.
Sounds, you know, particularly thinking primary, of course. So how is the FSCs financially supported? I mean, that's a lot of centres, that's a lot of money to keep them going. Is it through some sort of sponsorship scheme? How does it work?
No, it's just run through course fees. So the schools that come pay a fee, as do lots of our other learners. So we do lots of leisure learning and adult courses that pay fees, and other things like we run DofE courses and stuff. So yeah, all the money we get in from our courses goes to keeping the magnificent buildings going and paying our staff and so on and so on.
You said D of B or C of B?
Duke of Edinburgh.
Oh, Duke of Edinburgh.
Yeah. Sorry, terrible at using little acronyms.
Yeah. On your website, it talks about an experience to remember. In your experience working with schools, and you've already indicated that you do and you teach, in terms of the feedback you receive, how would you categorize these experiences? What do they come up with, the schools? Yeah,
good question. I think sometimes we kind of fall into the trap of thinking that it's about curriculum-based learning, because lots of our courses are, but it's not in any way just about that. And I've worked with a huge number of groups I've worked with the Field Studies Council for nearly 18 years, but lots and lots of primary groups. Yes, it's working outside, you get a tan and you don't look your age, but I work with loads of schools and especially primary groups, and what they come back with all the time is, the learning is really important and the curriculum links are really useful for teachers, but actually the benefit to the students is having that space to run around in, having the option to be as loud as you want or as quiet as you can be, and having the time and space to play and get to know each other, and not just with their peers but with the teachers as well. And we find time and again that teachers tell us that the students that might not shine in class, or who might sort of struggle to concentrate, are leading the activity outside and really showing their confidence and what they can do. And teachers really get to see a different side of the children, and the children get to see the fun side of their teachers, sort of throwing water on their shelter building efforts, or singing songs. Sounds like fun. Yeah, singing songs around the campfire. So it's those things that they don't get a chance to do in a classroom that actually are really, really fun. So that's the one thing, is the kind of added fun factor. Yeah. And then I think the other thing that often we get told about is the kind of soft skills side. So, making their own sandwiches and realizing that jam and ham is a horrible combination and tomorrow they're going to have cheese, or, just making their beds, those kind of things. And yes, being independent, learning to mix with each other and sit down at dinner and have conversations and talk about their day, and also just adapting to, the activities that they're doing. And maybe they don't get things right the first time. Maybe it's, an activity that kind of pushes their boundaries a little bit, but working together and really kind of making that team effort is such a huge thing. We get a lot of our primary trips are their first time away from home overnight, which that's exactly, and it's a huge thing to get through with each other, and they really do kind of, they lean on each other and they learn to kind of help each other along the way. So that's brilliant. Elements of personal, social, health education within that, as well as developing independent skills
is a sort of summary of what you've mentioned. Well,
Yeah.
that's really positive. And sadly, it's something that schools don't always have the time to do because of those very pressures of the curriculum and what's around the corner in terms of the demands made upon that school.
Absolutely.
So, well, that sounds really beneficial to me. What sort of real life experiences do primary age children come across when they come to these field studies centres?
So with our primary groups, our aim as tutors is to spend as much time as possible outside, whatever the weather, and really engage them in activities that they might not have done before, or they might be building on something they've done. So that's really important for us, especially at the moment, in the light that lots of children we know have not had that opportunity to be outside for a long time with the pandemic, and have been, maybe missed out on trips before. So doing activities such as, we do things like orienteering and bushcraft skills. So they kind of make a campfire and toast a marshmallow and, build a shelter and things like that. And then we get sort of more science and geography based topics like pond dipping, and we do sort of lots of things that we link into lots of things like literacy through landscapes, which is like a big hike, and then you make a poem about, the way you felt around your hike. And we do things like stargazing, making bird boxes and bug hunting. So they're not things that are so high adrenaline that they're just doing, kind of mad activities. They're all linked in to things that they know about or need to know about, but they're really good fun, and they're, doing them together and sort of really expanding their horizons.
So really taking advantage of the environment around this field studies centre. And I can see some parallels there with forest schools as well, some of the activities you mentioned, but you seem to have gone beyond that as well, which is quite interesting. So that's great. What a lot of good experiences. Now, the FSC, the Field Studies Centre, provides residential one-night stays, which could be, several days. And I've certainly experienced this, and it was incredibly beneficial. How is that organised, and how do you sort of tailor their few nights or few days stay with the teacher, the children, and the school? How does that work?
Yes. So as you mentioned, we can do residentials that are one-night stays at primary up to 4-night stays. So we can have a whole week or just an overnight. And that really depends on the age of the children, the location, so whether the school is quite far away from the centre, and then obviously the requirements of the school and how long they can be out for. And essentially what will happen is, at primary level, we have a series of modules that can be put together to build a trip of the required length.
Yes, of course.
So you go to our website, which I'm sure we can share in a video.
I'll put that on the screen. Yes.
Brilliant, thank you. And then there'll be a list of those modules. So they might say things like, as I say, pond dipping or disappearing animals or eco action, and those will be activities for the day. And then there'll also be evening activities such as campfire or night walk or stargazing. And the teacher can kind of just build up a trip that they would like to do. And then they'll speak to someone in our sales team. So through the website, you get, click a little button and it takes you to someone in our sales team. And they then put them in touch with a centre. Now, it might be that a school specifically wants to go to a certain centre. Maybe it's their closest one, or they have a particular interest in it. Or it might be that they want to go further afield, and they'll be advised as to the best kind of place that they can go. Then when they get put in touch with the centre, that's when there can be tailoring done to the programme. So if a teacher is saying, we've got this scheme of work and we want to really fit this part in, then the tutor then can speak to them about what requirements they have, what level the children are at, and what they need to kind of focus on. So we can really drill down at that point. And that conversation obviously is two-way between the tutor and the teacher.
Yes.
And they'll also speak to the admin at that centre, who will organise things like the medical lists and the dietary requirements. which bedrooms the children are going to go into and who wants to stay with who and all that kind of stuff. And that process is really kind of facilitated by the centre. So the teachers are kind of walked through what they need to do in order to get that booking secured. And then the only other thing that really comes up is if there's any kind of other things. So sometimes we liaise with parents if there's a specific need that a child has, you know, a dietary requirement or something else, then we can obviously include that conversation. But mostly it's between the teacher and the staff members at the centre. So it's costed, at many of our groups are costed per child, but there will be a minimum number of children for a group, but it also the cost changes throughout the year. So we have peak times and off-peak times. It's much cheaper to come, obviously, that when you're not right in the summer months where everybody wants to come and sort of have the best of the weather. But what happens is if you contact through the website, through the sales team, they'll be able to tell you immediately what the costings will be for any particular trip that you're looking at.
Okay, well, I'll put that link down there. That's really useful. You've mentioned minimum size group. What sort of minimum size group is that typical, depending of course on the centre? Yeah,
it's typically 10 children is the minimum.
10, and maximum again, does that depend?
They have to fit in the centre, but that's all.
Yeah, they got to fit in the centre.
We have some
outside or something.
Exactly. We have some centres that are larger than others. So, for example, the centre that I work at Flatford Mill holds around about 80 students, but we have some centres that are bigger than that and can take more students. So it really depends on where the centre that you might be going to, and how many nights.
So forth. But of course they can come for the day, and obviously there's a cost for that, and in terms of the facilities, the tutor, the materials and so forth. Well, that's good. You also advertise outreach packages. What's that all about?
Yeah, so outreach packages, this has again sort of come from our efforts during the lockdown. So we kind of, when we were coming out of lockdown, we decided that actually some schools might want us to come to them, but wouldn't be able to maybe get all students out to a centre. So what we've done is we've put together these little packages that a teacher could buy in, and they get a tutor that comes to the school or a nearby green space. So if your school had a kind of park over the road with a a playing field or something like that, then the tutor would run it there. And essentially, for early years in Key Stage 1, there's topics such as living things and seasons and trees and plants. And the tutor will come with all the equipment and, do some activities with the children. But it's quite a short day, obviously, and it is limited to what the school grounds or local green space
Precisely. You can't do the sterile atmosphere of a classroom, for instance.
Yes,
that's not really going to work.
No, but it really does depend. But I mean, you would be surprised at the resourcefulness of some of our tutors, the things that they can, come up with it just a couple of trees, and you can have some really fun activities and stuff.
There's a flower box over there.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, so those are options. And obviously, we would prefer people to come to our centres because there's so much more space and, different habitats and all the equipment's there. But
better experience.
But if that's not an option, then look into outreach because it can be done.
Good. And in terms of resources, I've seen that there's secondary resources, primary resources, apart from what's in the shop itself, because you've got a shop section to your website, which looks really interesting. I do urge people to have a look at that. Do you also provide a primary resources in any way, shape or form?
So at the moment, no, we just have the publication site with all of our guides on, which are really, they are really great. Big colourful guides are lovely. We have our primary nature live videos, which they're hosted on our website, and they're all free resources for primary schools. So you can, anyone can watch those back who didn't get involved the first time. But what we're actually currently working on at the moment is looking at expanding our primary resource offer. So we've been doing a project with NFS, and we're looking at how nature-friendly schools.
Oh yes, okay.
So
Yeah.
we're looking at how we can learn from that and bring some of those resources to our primary schools as well. So watch this space.
Watch this space. Wow, that sounds really exciting. And I'm delighted that some attention is being given to primary school resources. That's brilliant. Now, we've covered quite a lot of stuff about the FSC. Is there anything else you wanted to add to this sort of huge number of questions I've asked?
Yeah, just really to say, just to remind everyone that there's nothing like the real thing about being outside. And there isn't, I don't think there's a lesson in a school day that couldn't be enriched by connecting to nature, not necessarily being outside, but having that nature connection, and enhancing how students of all ages, but specifically for primary school students, how they feel about the environment and how they care about it. And that's really important, just for them, for their attainment and for their well-being, but also for a community. It's really important. Children who understand what's going on around them, care about what's going on around them, and they are more engaged and more willing to look after the world. So it's really important to try and get them out as much as possible. And it doesn't have to be at a Field Studies Council centre or another provider. It can be in your local park or your school grounds. Just getting them outside and enjoying themselves is really
so effectively you're opening up the world even more for children, rather than the backwards and forwards between home and school all the time, the occasional holiday. But of course we mustn't forget that word motivation. Children are actively learning, taking things on board, and to do something like FSC offers motivates children to learn even more. So
yeah, absolutely.
Thanks, Jo, for
can I share with you my favorite quotes from one of our students?
Go on then.
It makes me smile every time I see it. We've got it on a big board in our centre. It was one of our primary students, and she said, she wrote down on a little postcard that they sent to us, I wanted to stay at Flatford Mill forever because when we were outside, everybody talks to each other more, and it's more fun than being sat inside looking at a board.
Oh, wonderful.
Very cute, very cute.
That is very cute indeed. I'll see if I can find space to put that on the screen as well.
Yeah,
so,
it's lovely.
Thank you very much indeed for today. That's been absolutely
brilliant.
Bye for now.
Thank you.